Hello there and welcome to this week's Granny's Garden. Now in the month of May this year I started a new experiment. I had recently discovered a hidden patio below the lawn and I needed to find a plant that was capable of surviving my extreme conditions, weather conditions. I live in Spain and therefore the summers are extremely hot, but living in the mountains at the same time, my winters are very, very cold. So plants have got to be really tough here to survive. So I selected a series of plants and I was going to follow them, the aim of the experiment, over an entire growing year, even through its dormancy period, to find out which do well, which don't do well, and which can actually survive. It's now the month of October, we're into autumn, so just let's have a look to see how they're doing. The first plant in the list of the experiment, Campanula. I love Campanula, my parents love Campanula, great memories of their house with loads and loads of it planted. So my idea here is to plant it in the pockets that are nearest the lawn, the entire length of this patio. Now if I get in close, these are planted as very small plants, and this first growing season, they've been there since the month of May and we're now in October. They've really filled out, but they're going to thicken out even more. They've gone from this to this, and this one will definitely fill out as far as here, and the same ditto the other side. So there's going to get a nice carpet effect here, which is the look I've been looking for. A little bit further on, there's another two here planted. The same thing. They've got more filling out to do here, but they're going to do it without any problem whatsoever. As you can see, some of them are still in flower. They've been sheared back very heavily twice already, because they've been flowering on and off throughout the entire year. But they've been doing really, really well, and they have survived our very, very hot summer. Because if I pull back, if you see some of the sizes of these flagstones, they're absolutely enormous. This one here is a good 3.5 foot long and 2.5 foot wide. So we're talking about very, very large flagstones. And when you get high 90s to 100 degree plus temperatures, sun beating down on top of it, it absorbs the heat. You can't even touch them that hot. So the radiant heat is very impressive. And considering that these flop over, I've cut them back obviously, but these flop over onto that stone, the fact that they can survive is pretty amazing. So definitely doing very well, this one. The next plant in the experiment, violets, ordinary common violets. I took little slivers of plants from the back patio or the back garden and brought it here and just shoved them in any old which way without paying very much attention to them. And look how they have come on. That's a good 2 foot across and it's working its way into the crevices. Now this plant I've planted towards the back of the patio. There's all of this length. And then right up against the wall of the perennial and bulb border. Remember, that's the porch. This is the bulb and perennial. And then I've got a sleepers forming a wall on this raised bed. And then right below it, giving it some protection from that sun, I planted the violets. These violets get morning sun and midday sun, but the really, really hot afternoon sun, which is like 3, 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon here in Spain, it's protected and it's in shade. It's now quite thick and lush, and as I said, it is spreading. How does it spread? Well, in violets, a bit like a strawberry. Just if we can get here. Yeah, there's one here. It sends out an aerial runner like this, and then starts forming what would be future plants. Now, if it has the misfortune to land on the rock, it doesn't worry, it just sends out more until it finds a suitable place. If that comes this way and lands on earth, then it starts forming roots, and then it'll start feeding that plant from those roots, and then it'll send out more tendrils and keep going, which is what's happened in this area here. It started here, it's going up there, and it's now coming down this new crack, and it'll eventually fill in the whole of this area. Now the next plant is Phlox Subulata cushion blue, or Moss Phlox. Now it's a really, really dark green, which I like quite a lot because it contrasts greatly with the lighter flagstones. The stems are really woody. If I can get up close you can hear. A bit like rosemary almost. And the plant, because they're on stiff stems, is always maintained slightly elevated from the flagstone. So I don't know if you can see it, but there is actually a little gap, which does help when you get radiant heat in the summer. It's not actually sort of lying flat against it or frying on top of the frying pan. It's always slightly elevated, so there is air always travelling underneath it. Now again, this has thickened out. They've all thickened out, but it is quite slow. It's certainly not like the violets, or certainly not like the Campanula that have like doubled and tripled in size. This has probably got half as much height. It probably was about maybe this much growth in the growing season so far. So definitely a nice plant, definitely a nice colour. We'll have to see how it goes through the winter, but certainly it's sailed through spring and summer without any problem whatsoever. Definitely on the con side is how long it's going to take to fill in each of those pockets. Now what did surprise me was the creeping Mazus. It does have a reputation for being a bit of a thug. However, its delicate stems have lain completely flat against the paving stones for nearly 3 months in the high 90s and 100 plus, and they haven't missed a beat. I did have to move a couple of the Moss Phlox because it completely engulfed them, and in actual fact is about to engulf another one. As you can see, it's creeping up on this and it's going to take over, so I'm going to have to move that one as well. But on the bright side, it is outcompeting weeds and even crabgrass. Also, cutting it back is just so easy. Here you have it lying over those flagstones, and if you want a more natural look, you see it's completely free from the flagstones. You can lift it up like a carpet. If you want a more natural look, you just pull it off like that. And if you want a more neat cut, you just put literally scissors underneath and cut it. It is so thin, the little tendrils, dead easy. And the flowers are so delightful. Now, we have been having a week of temperatures in the low 40s at night, and it's not liking it. The leaves are starting to go a little bit autumnal, a little bit more brown here. I don't mind if it goes like that in the winter. I don't mind if it pouts and has a hissy fit in the winter, as long as it survives the winter and comes back and bounces back next spring. But this is part of the experiment. What will happen when we go through our snow and when we go through our Arctic blasts? What is going to happen? From the point of view of the experiment, this is definitely the most successful. It's filled in the gaps, it's surrounded those paving stones. It looks as if it's been here for several years and not just several months. Obviously, it's gone through spring, it's gone through summer, but it's still got to get through winter, it's got to get through my snowy season, my freezing temperatures, and see if it bounces back successfully. If it does, I think we're on to a winner here. But if I do go forward on this, I've got to remember that it is a thug. This is not a plant you can just leave and forget about, because it will overtake and cover the flagstones completely and will start overtaking anything in its path, like the Moss Phlox. Well, really, when you have paving stones like this, you can't let anything get out of control. This hidden patio precisely came about because somebody had left a lawn get out of hand, the grass had been growing between the flagstones, had joined together, and after years of neglect had formed a lawn as thick as this one. And only by complete mistake did I find out that the previous owners had left an entire patio below the lawn. Now, the next thing I want to do is bring a bit of bling to this patio container. This is the European fan palm, and because of its growth habit, the leaves, when they get old, start to get a bit yellow and brown, and you cut them off at the base, so the actual trunk gets larger and larger, but around the base there's going to be nothing. It's not like, for instance, the hydrangea that I have growing in containers, where it fills out and covers the entire pot. This is always going to have a base of basically nothing, where you're going to get weeds. So I'm going to brighten it up a bit and put a little bit of bling in its life. Now, I have had a jar of this fireglass in my garden cupboard for months, and I never seem to get around to doing anything with it. For those of you who are not very familiar, I know in the United States they use it a lot. Basically, it's fire glass, it's tempered glass, so it can withstand very, very hot temperatures. It doesn't melt, it doesn't burn. So it's used in gas fire pits and ethanol fire pits. But leaving temperature characteristics to one side, it also reflects the light. Talk about bling. Imagine this now in the sun at different angles catching it. It comes in several different colours. This one is light amber, but also comes in dark amber, blue, greens, yellows, reds. I particularly like the blue and the amber, but in this case I'm going for light amber. And in its manufacturing process, it gets rumbled and tumbled around. So all of these sharp edges, because remember it is glass, have been removed. So it is quite safe. Either way, it's probably not best to squash it in your hand, but it is quite safe. The manufacturer does recommend, however, that although it comes quite clean, just to push it in some water with a little tiny bit of vinegar to give it that little bit of extra sparkle before you use it. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm just going to pop it in a little basin, add a little bit of white vinegar, squidge it round, and then rinse it off with a hose pipe, and then I'm going to spread it over that container and see what the end result looks like. Can you see how sparkly that is? Now I've just applied the first little layer there. And again, it's very subtle because of the colour. If you have it in a blue colour, it's very, very nice, but obviously a lot less subtle. Well, this is the jar I have. As you can see, it's tempered half-inch reflective fire glass, and it's £10, which did the whole of this container. Probably a bit too much. I could have done with about £9 only, but I did want to leave a little bit at the end. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video on the update of my hidden patio and also adding a bit of bling to bring some sunshine into these very, very cool autumn days. And I hope to see you next week here in Granny's garden. Bye bye now.